Hello YouTube. In this episode of the Hypertrophy series, I'm going to bridge the topic of neurological adaptations. I'm mostly going to refer to it as technical trainings or technical points because to me it's a less technical appellation, but it works just as well. And it also resonates with what I call the technical rating of a lift. But keep in mind that those two things are essentially the same. So, when we talk about neurological adaptations, we're discussing the ability of the body to adapt to a movement pattern. And this ability is dormant in you in a sense. When you're a little kid, you are already born with the ability to squat. You're already born with the ability to do a hip hinge, simply because you have the joints that can get you through that range of motion. And instinctively, you are able to do them really well. If you have a baby in your family, you'll see that when they squat, they do a perfect squat ass to grass without the need to balance themselves with their arms. No one taught them how to do that. They just naturally know how to. And as you age, you unlearn that. So your technical ability to perform it dies. But it's always something you can recover. And for trainees who start doing bench, squat, and deadlift, that is going to be the biggest obstacle in their way. It's the technical ability to perform the lift properly. And once you have achieved that ability, is when I personally consider that you have really started training. The time period that you spend learning how to do them is more of a trial in a sense. But most people get through that trial and then they make gains off of it. Some take longer, some cannot really figure out why, but a movement never really makes sense. But the day it clicks is the day that the neurological adaptation starts. And once it has started, there's a certain time period that could range from a few weeks to a few months that is going to be necessary for you to be able to perform those lifts. In my opinion, to reach technical mastery on a lift, it will require a few months depending on the type of lift and the technical rating of the lift and its technical ceiling. So to master a snatch is going to take a lot more time than to master a curl. A curl could take 2 weeks. A snatch could take a year. It's different and it depends from people to people. Some people have a very strong ability to just focus their mind and are fast learner in that aspect. Some take more time. But at the end of the day, the goal of the neurological adaptation is for you to be able to perform the lift optimally, involve the most muscles possible, do it for repetitions and multiple sets per week, and activate the muscle to its full potential. What you find is that people who are not versed in the art of compound movements and lifting in general are really bad at recruiting muscles, meaning that the ability they have of pushing a weight does not correlate with their actual strength. There's a big percentage that just goes to waste because they just don't know how to properly recruit their body, how to properly use their body. And I think that across the board, most people are going to have that ability eventually. You can build up to that ability. Your strength, once the technical points are maxed out, is going to depend on your leverages, your size, etc. But the ability to get to that max potential, at least neurologically, we're all equal with that. Everyone can do that. That's extremely important to establish because it also means that there is a certain point where that technical rating is not going to keep going up, meaning that you're going to reach something that could really be considered a summit, where you're at your peak. This is it, you know how to do the movement. Now, any gains in strength you're going to make from this point on is going to be from muscular gains or from just mass gains, so you can gain fat and get stronger as well. And this also means that the gains you made beforehand, a lot of the noob gains that you thought were muscles, were actually neurological adaptations. It wasn't you getting bigger, it was just your brain getting better at moving. And that makes total sense when you look at the rate of progression of most novices who put on 10 pounds every week. That's not muscles. Of course, it's not muscles. You are gaining muscle very fast, but not at this rate. And this also helped me debunk an argument that I hear a lot that discourages people and also demoralizes them and prevents them from learning how to program. And that argument is any gain you make in terms of strength could be attributed to neurological adaptations. That can be discouraging for people who want to gain muscle because they might get stronger and think, oh wow, it's just my brain becoming more efficient. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not the case. You have reached, most likely if you've been lifting for a month or a year, a peak in your technical adaptation. That's it. You're there. And now the only way for that rating to move is if you regress, if you stop practicing the movement. But at this point, you're capped out the technical rating, and anything above it is muscular gains. So past the novice phase, even during the novice phase, when you're comfortable with a lift and you get stronger, now it's muscle. Unless you drastically change your technique or your stance when you squat or you deadlift, any pound on the bar is muscle gain. Keep that in mind because that's going to keep you going. Okay, strength progression is very important when taken into the context of bodybuilding. Now that has been said, we need to deal with the challenges that this also implies, because I just told you that you can lose technical points if you don't practice a lift. And you can lose them fast, you can lose them slow, again, it depends on the lift. I personally find that stuff like an overhead press, for example, I don't know if it's strength or technical rating, but I lose a ton of strength on the press when I don't practice. And I said I don't know. I think I do know. I think it's mostly strength, actually. I think presses, because of the small, quote unquote, muscles they involve, have a tendency to have you regress fast when you don't practice them. And it might sound counterintuitive, but I have found also that the lifts that regress the most when it comes to technical mastery are the squat and the deadlift. And paradoxically, it's also a good thing because it regresses very, very slowly. Meaning that you can stop squatting for a week and pick it up again. Your technique is not going to be garbage. And for the most part, there's a chance you didn't even lose any strength. Now, the issue with that is it can backfire spectacularly because it also means that the time that you spent not training those movements is time where the technical rating regressed, which is also going to take the same amount of time to get back. So when you look at muscles, for example, if you don't train for a while, the muscle hypertrophies, and then it grows back up again. It's the same for technique. And you have to keep that in mind because the two are linked together. As I said at the start, if your technique goes to shit, you're not going to be able to perform the lifts properly, so you're not going to be able to recruit the muscles properly, and you might even risk injury, so you have to keep that in mind. In terms of progression and regression, I have found that the technical rating progresses fastest, and the muscle and also regresses fastest, and the muscle is slower to gain and slower to lose. But since they interact with one another, this discrepancy really doesn't make much of a difference, at least from a performance standpoint. From an aesthetic standpoint, it's good news because it means that even if you take long breaks, you'll see that your body doesn't change that much. But I'll cover that and I'll explain why it really is. It's a double-edged sword because just because the body didn't look different doesn't mean that the function of the body didn't change, and the function is what made the body look that way in the first place. But that's for a different video. So now that what needs to be discussed is how are we going to make sure that the technical rating stays as high as possible, as much as possible? Well, it's simple. You're going to practice the lift. And as I said, since the technical rating doesn't regress super fast, you can really keep it at a high level without putting in too much effort. And the beauty of that too is any variation that is close in terms of specificity to the main lift you're trying to keep up in terms of neurological adaptation is going to be an opportunity to practice that lift indirectly. So for example, if you do post squats, that carries over to the back squat in terms of technical rating. And so it really is extremely easy for lifters to do that. That being said, as I explained, understand also that a week that passes with you not practicing a lift is a week where you regress technically, and therefore you regress in terms of performance to an extent. That's for 1 week. Now think about it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I know people who have certain types of programs with lift rotations where they don't practice a movement pattern for a full month. And that is catastrophic for bodybuilders. I would even say that for powerlifters, it's not something that you're supposed to be doing. And so it needs to be prevented. You need to have a constant rotation and a steady stream of technical points that are going to feed those movements. And this is really crucial if you think about lifts and programs in terms of the tree of specificity that I presented on the channel a week ago. Because if you want the tree to keep growing, you need to have the ability to perform the lifts. And to perform the lifts, you need to be technically sound. And so when you program, you need to make sure you get iterations of the lift that come back at least once a week. And you'll find that it's really not that difficult. It might be difficult on body parts you're trying to sandbag. So for example, if you're sandbagging on the chest, you're not doing bench that much, and you only bench once a week, that once a week might not be enough for you to maintain that technical mastery. But if you add a variation for a second day of the week, now you're doing more work. So that's going to be a balancing act on your behalf, because you might be able to just cut down on the volume for the first bench day, put that volume on a secondary horizontal press on another day in the week, which is going to be better for technical rating. And that's important. You might get the same results for hypertrophy, but if you split the frequency like that, in terms of neurological adaptations, you're going to be better off. And it's also the reason why people who say frequency doesn't matter are wrong across the board, is because they don't take into account all of the factors that that type of theory or hypothesis creates. And technical mastery is mainly impacted by frequency, not really by volume, because it's the action of doing the thing. You're refreshing your mind. So you can do squats for 3 hours. Okay, great. You got all of your technical points the first 45 minutes maybe. After that, it's pure hypertrophy, it's pure muscular damage. If you split those 3 hours to 1 hour 3 times a week, now you get those 45 minutes each time. You tripled the amount of time that you spend training the neurological adaptation in your brain for knee flexion. And that is, of course, very beneficial. Understand also that you cannot break the technical ceiling, and there is no point in breaking the technical ceiling, but there is one in maintaining it at the highest level possible. So that's going to be the video on technical points, neurological adaptation, which is a topic that for novices is very important, but even for people who are more advanced, because it's also something that is going to influence the way you program in terms of frequency, in terms of set, repetition, etc. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.